Hello friends, this is Taylor of thebeginnerdrawingcourse.com and we're going to sketch some characters today. So let's just hop right into it with tip number one. The first tip I have for you is sketch them small. Make really small sketches at first that you can elaborate upon later. I'm just using the round brush in Photoshop and I'm literally scribbling, guys. Like, you really don't have to have any idea in mind when you start. It's really helpful, but if you're just trying to practice designing characters, you can go off of pretty much any idea, and little ideas are easier to kind of reconfigure and have more overview on than big ideas. So I'm just really quick to let go of stuff that doesn't work and kind of retry quickly some of these small ideas. We're going to run through probably 3, 4, maybe 5 thumbnails over the next 2 minutes or so, just to see if anything is worth fleshing out, anything would be worth kind of elaborating upon. This one I have a better feeling about, and I'm just letting my feeling guide this process. My intuitive feeling of, oh, this could be cool, or this could be appealing, or this could be accidentally on the background layer and I should probably make another layer above it. So what I'm going to do is just quickly just cut this guy out like that. Gotta do the fun part, fill the background back in, replace the character there so that's on its own layer now. Anyhow, you just want something that will be appealing, and it should look good from far away, it should look good small, and that's what makes for an interesting character, is that it'll have multiple different reads and all those reads will be good. And we'll talk about those reads as we proceed. The first read is sort of the thumbnail read, and we're doing a silhouette, meaning that there's not a lot of detail, there's just a bunch of scribbles that we can fill in, but this will be number 1. So that's our first little sketch. Let's do a number 2. So that, I'll do a little more line based this time. This is a little more silhouette, a little more shape based. We're going to do another character, and this one's going to be a little more dynamic, a little more fun, maybe a jumping character pose. These are basically just glorified stick people. I have some videos on the channel that show how to do stuff like this, or I have 6 free drawing lessons if you sign up for the mailing list that show you how to take stick people and turn them into actual characters, actual drawings, because everybody's like, I can only draw a stick person, and you're like, well, if you really put your heart into it, Carol, maybe you could draw something better, you know, something that's not a stick person. So this is looking kind of strange. They've got like a little plant thing on their head. I don't know, man. It's weird. It's kind of interesting. It's dynamic, but I don't know. I'm not usually I mean, we can do really weird characters that actually might be fun. Usually I don't let myself have a sense of humor, but I'm feeling a bit like a jester today, so we might play around with that. Anyway, we'll just call that number 2. It doesn't really matter as much since this is just a quick demo. There's probably going to be, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of footage. And this will be number 3. Just another character. Maybe a more serious character this time. And it could be a little more mechanical, maybe. I'm still getting pretty organic feels from it, from these shapes. Which actually brings me to one of my tips, which is to think in shapes, and we'll elaborate upon that a little bit later. So, maybe a character with like a blaster, or powers that they're showcasing. That could be pretty sweet. Let's do a cyberpunk thing. Let's just give them like a super interesting bit of headgear in terms of the shape design, and that'll be fun to flesh out later. We're just creating a little anticipation for ourselves as we go through this process. And we'll just call that number 3. That's good enough. So now we have these 3 different sketches, all of which, as you can see, are not that impressive. But the point was just to get something down, because we don't have ideas at this point, and then we can take these really basic ideas and elaborate upon them with all the wonderful drawing skills we've cultivated over the years, or through really rad courses like the beginner drawing course. But anyway, let's just cut to the next section where we will be kind of taking the best one and elaborating upon it. Okay, so here we are after picking the best one, which is tip number 3. You want to pick the one that you feel has the most potential to be something unique and interesting to look at, and I think that's the weird sprout head character thing, so we're going to go with that. I'm going to get rid of the number 2 because it's messing up the bounding box in Photoshop. I'm just going to scale that guy, girl, whatever it is, up. And then we're going to drop the opacity because now we're a little more serious about our drawing. So I'm going to zoom in just a tad and see if we can't configure a face. So the sprout idea to me is pretty fun to work with. It's pretty interesting. I think I can take it into sort of a druidic direction, but I'm sick of fantasy, frankly, so let's go with more of a modern druid. Yeah, let's do sort of a modern druid. So I'm going to write that down. Modern druid. So the plant head thing I may or may not keep, but it got the ideas flowing, so it's fine. Let's make it a female figure. No, let's do dude. We'll do a dude. So modern druid. What's more modern than wearing a hoodie? This character's going to wear a hoodie, so I'll just sketch that in quick. And this is just the first drawing. I don't consider the first drawing the one we just did. That's the thumbnail. This is going to be the first iteration. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to sketch, and I'm actually going to sketch in a much lighter way. Just makes it a little easier to elaborate upon later. So we're going to just start off maybe figuring out what this character is going to be proportioned like. So I'll start with the head. It's a pretty good place to begin as far as proportions go. And I'll just have maybe a kind of a crazy haired youth, maybe just out of their teens. Interesting haircut, shaved in the back, shaved on the sides. And we'll make it sort of profile. So we have sort of a modern druid is the idea. It can be leaping. I'm going to scale that head up a little bit. There we go. And then let's continue to draw this profile. It's a dude with some plant-based abilities. Powers are always a fun one to work with. I personally don't watch a lot of shows or things where there's not some element of magic or superpower or supernatural ability. I find that stuff to be pretty cool. Sometimes I'll watch action stuff and that's still pretty inspiring. But for me, the fun part is handling powers, handling like X-Men type stuff. So just doodling away here. Got some pretty young man proportions. Sketching the hoodie. We'll have part of it flying up. I'm thinking of like now the Jack Frost character from that one Pixar movie. I don't know. Maybe it was DreamWorks. I don't watch a lot of 3D movies anymore. I'm 29 and I don't have kids, so there's like no reason to unless you're really into that sort of thing. I'm sure I'll get back into it when I'm in my like mid or late 30s and have kids that care about it, but for me, I'm too busy watching anime. So anyway, so drawing pretty modern druid kid. I'm gonna flip it just so I can check what's going on as far as not letting my eyes get lazy. And even though the words are flipped, I can still see my sketch, which is, you know, nice. Get some wrinkles going on in the hoodie because this is where the stuff is bent. I'm gonna have branches wrapped around his arms. His arms aren't gonna be crazy developed, like he's not a lifter or a builder. He probably gets a lot of cardio, whatever kind of thing he's doing. Maybe he's going around the city trying to use his powers to stop bad people, bad kids. I don't know much about the world yet. We've just started with a character and you can kind of extrapolate based on that. I think I'm going to give him a staff. because that's still pretty sweet. It's like you bring forward the fantasy element or some sort of fantastic element, and it's also going to be really cool for the silhouette. So I'll let him hold the staff with like 2 hands as he's jumping. He's not really looking at where he's jumping. His expression's kind of mundane. So I'm gonna have to change that eventually. And then you get a phone call. Hang on. Yeah, so that was my girlfriend, and I love her. I love her so much, but she calls at the perfect times sometimes. It was good. We had a good talk, but now it's time to draw. Alright, so I'm sure this is kind of boring you. If you're here just to learn character design stuff, you don't want to watch me walk you through process stuff. If you really want that, then you can go to thebeginnerdrawingcourse.com, and there's another character design tutorial I just put out where it shows you that from start to finish. But for this one, I'm going to cut ahead till, when I have more progress on this. Okay, so just a little heads up while I do this time lapse that I fortunately recorded here. I had a little mishap where the next audio section you're about to hear is recorded in tandem with me having copied the character over and did some design changes. You're still going to hear me talk about them, but you're going to see me coloring the character on screen. So what I'm mentioning visually is going to be not relevant, but what I'm saying about character design is still pertinent. So you'll still be able to note the differences between each character and the reason why, but it's not going to be synced up from audio to visual. It's still going to make some sense, but I'm just warning you for the cognitive dissonance. I just had a recording mishap. I love you all very much, and I know you'll forgive me, but I just wanted to alert you prior to me skipping ahead. So you're going to see me coloring and just painting a little bit on the portrait that I draw. So let's just cut to that section. Alright, so this is where we ended up after about 10 more minutes of sketching. Just a cool dynamic pose and some of these ideas that are kind of laid in here. I switched the hoodie, because that was a little too much like that Jack Frost movie I talked about, into more of a scarf with some leaf motifs. We want motifs to let people know what our character has an affinity for. So in this case, if it's a modern druid, pretty modern clothing and a scarf with some leaf kind of emblems going on, leaf symbols. And then we have a staff or spear, and there's a couple thorns on this guy to let you know that it's organic and like, yeah, you can just buy it at the grocery store basically. No, he generates them. He generated this weapon, and so it's got some thorns on it, like say a rosewood, and so maybe he calls it rosewood, I don't know. So this is just the process that you kind of go through when you're coming up with characters. Is you create these ideas and you draw, and you kind of riff back and forth between your drawing and your ideas, and it's just a lot of fun. So the tip is probably like a really sharp or hardened blade of grass or a sharp piece of wood or something. He's kind of still developing his abilities, I'm sure, at this point, since he's young. And then we just have some good old-fashioned debris to let you know what direction he's moving in, give it a little more dynamism. Last but not least, we have some roots coiled around from his ankles to the bottom of his shoes. My thinking on this was that he would augment his abilities to jump and run and sprint and kick and do all that fun stuff by having kinetic energy stored within the roots that would allow him to do all of the aforementioned stuff that would qualify as like a sort of a druid monk hybrid kind of deal. So we're trying to combine things that haven't really been done as much before, just because it's more fun to see and it's more fun to create. So my next tip I'm going to tell you is to make variants. So even though I really enjoy this first iteration, I'm not attached to it per se. So this is another variant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create some variations on these shapes and ideas. So maybe instead of a scarf, there's no scarf. And this shape right here will then change. Let's say the outfit could be more of like a turtleneck kind of deal. So maybe the turtleneck's got some strings like a hoodie would, because then we can still have a dynamic flowing element. And then we can add some shoulder patches, maybe break it up with some marks. We're getting a little more into the fantasy realm here, but at least we're still staying relatively modern with belts and stuff. It's a little Final Fantasy. They kind of coined a lot of that aesthetic, to my knowledge. As far as the spear goes, it's a really big compositional element, but you can still play with what it is. Instead of a spear, it could just be a bow staff. Maybe it's a little bit longer, make for a different silhouette. So a little more played down, the druidic element is now. The coils and springs are on the legs, and those would justify being able to leap super high, but they don't need to really stay as a result of just kind of creating variance and working with ideas here. So instead of having those as part of the silhouette, as part of the figure, I'll just go ahead and keep it pretty normal. We'll add maybe some boots. I'm going to sketch those in quick. Again, not trying to show you a bunch of technical stuff. The point of this is to just show you character design and a little bit of concepting so that you can rock your own characters a little bit better. So just to review our tips thus far, we have start small. We have mark the best one and kind of go with that, or the most interesting one. Make variants is another tip. So we now have 2 figures here with different silhouettes, different ideas, and you can think in shapes is the last thing I'll say for now before kind of proceeding. So when you're thinking in shapes, some of these shapes are very belt oriented, as we're kind of leaving the silhouette there, or rather changing it. We could instead have some more square shapes. For example, I could have it so that he carries around a small bag with him that's belted to his upper leg, and that's a more square shape, and I could add more square shapes by just basically throwing them in anywhere. And when you're thinking in shapes and using motifs like that, we're creating just feelings about the character. Like squares are more solid, more structural, so that's why giving this a sharp edge feels different than letting this kind of be squared off like at the edges here. Now he feels like a more solid character. He doesn't feel as much like sort of a more freeform, natural, organic, plant-based looking druid. So maybe his druid elements are played down and we're a little more monk, a little less druid. But we could still let people see the druidic stuff by maybe having some other clothing element come with him, or having some other ideas that sort of float around. Like you could do a bunch of leaf motifs as he's jumping. And just sketching these in super quick so you can have an idea of it. And maybe he uses the leaves as like an aura, like a distraction. So a little more autumnal maybe is the one. I'd color this one. I'd color this, yeah, probably more with autumn tones, and then this one we would probably rock way more in the realm of like spring or summer colors. So again, we're just testing out these ideas for this character, seeing which ones work a little bit better, which ones are maybe more reflective of the personality, have a stronger design overall, and that really helps to get us clearer on what the backstory is, which is actually the next point. So if I came up with an origin story for this character, then this moment in time where we're seeing them, we should be seeing those things on the clothing, on the character, in the expression, and all that stuff. So a really big thing to keep in mind when you're designing characters is backstory, and you don't have to have a backstory fully written prior to designing your character. You just have to get sort of a rough notion, really. Like I started with nothing, and this is my character now. It's almost magical, but really it's just a lot of different techniques and skill sets stacked on top of each other. So that's kind of how you can begin to create. If you're more art-oriented rather than writing-oriented, then this will help you with the writing portion. If you're more writing-oriented, then maybe write down a bunch of bio details first, maybe a couple paragraphs of their life or their story or whatever you need that'll help unveil this character's ideas or abilities. Maybe for fun, I'll add like a tortoise. Oh my god, a tortoise shell backpack or something, like a dynamic diagonal element to help like counterpose this staff element here. So that'd be kind of cool. This one could have that little leaf thing going on in the back of his head for fun. It's a little bit kitschy. I'd probably only bring it out if he had like a weird emotion or something that it would signify. Maybe he would like be chewing on a sprig. That's another possibility. So again, we changed the silhouette a little bit, added a little more character, and still kept that that idea, that symbol, which is, you know, fun to play with. But yeah, I think that this is a good point to wrap it all up. You guys have lots of videos where I go through process, and all that is on the beginner drawing course. It's in some of the videos on this channel. So I think I said what I wanted to say, and I just wanted you to have some tips as far as being able to make some cool characters. The last things I will say before I kind of wrap up the video are to not just create variations, but explore the character, not just through backstory, but perhaps by creating a whole new document or by sketching in the character's head, you know, so we can get a closer look at their expression and some of their details. For example, like I would go in and sketch some of the hair details and the ears, and it's got some pretty rad eyebrows. There's some thick character building eyebrows that I could work with, and then maybe kind of like nonplussed, just sort of bored expression. Keep the same nose. So yeah, just explore your character. That's a super huge tip. You want to be able to just feel them out on a couple different levels while you're creating this being that you're hopefully going to be working with for a while, for the duration of your project. And it's, again, really important just to try a couple different angles before you settle on anything. If you're struggling with stuff like anatomy or just drawing concepts in general, I have courses for that. Some of it's on this channel, some of it's on the beginnerdrawingcourse.com. You can always put stuff in the comment box about like what are some of the things you like to draw or do to figure out your characters, and to kind of generate new ideas or have interesting things happen during the process, you know. So last but not least, I'll say just don't get attached to anything. Be willing to let go of all of it in favor of making something better. That's tip number 7. For those of you at home who are counting, just make sure that you have the wherewithal to let stuff go if it's not working, and that will allow you true creative freedom, because you want to be able to follow whatever your inclination is, and to let your heart and brain work synonymously with one another, so that you end up with results that are, you know, hit people on an emotional level as well as on a intellectual level. So that's pretty much it. I'm Taylor Payton. You can feel free to check out the beginnerdrawingcourse.com. You can feel free to just look in the description box in general, to subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up if you like videos like this and they help you. And in the future, I'll be doing more of them. You know, I'm rocking this pretty much full time now. I only have one client, and I just want to make awesome videos, work on my projects, and continue to provide value in as many ways as I can. So your support is always appreciated, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care, and happy creating.